Late in the evening on June 12, 1948, a rookie named Officer Mike Miller was only a month into his first job at the local station in a tough part of the city. His commander had warned him that if he could make it through these streets, he could handle any job in the world. But Mike was struggling. For decades, the local police had treated the neighborhood like a war zone, using force and taking bribes. The community had no reason to trust any officer, especially a newcomer like him. That night, Mike was patrolling the sidewalks by himself. His veteran partner had stayed home with a fever, leaving Mike to wander the main strip alone. He tried to act tough, but he was terrified. Suddenly, a group of 6 guys stepped out from a dark corner and circled him. They looked furious. "You're in the wrong place, pal," one of them growled. "I'm just walking my route," Mike replied, his voice shaking. "This isn't your route. This is our home, and you don't belong here," the man snapped. Mike tried to stay calm. "I'm just trying to do what I'm paid for." "What you're paid for is hurting people like us," the man said. "I haven't touched anyone," Mike argued. "That badge on your chest has been hurting us since before you were born," the leader said. Mike reached for his walkie-talkie, but another man pulled out a blade and hissed, "Don't even try it. We just want a word with you." Mike backed away, looking for a way out, but they had him trapped. "Look, I'm not looking for a fight," he pleaded. "It's too late for that," the man with the knife said. "That uniform makes you a target." "I'm not the guy you're looking for," Mike said. "To us, you're exactly who we're looking for," the man yelled as he swung the blade. Mike jumped back, nearly getting cut. He pulled out his pistol and told them to stay back. They didn't listen, they rushed him. Mike fired a shot toward the sky to scare them off, but they kept moving in. He was about to pull the trigger again when a deep voice cut through the noise. "Hold it right there." Everyone stopped moving. A man walked out of the darkness. He was older, wearing an expensive suit, and looked completely relaxed. It was Bumpy Johnson. Mike knew the name from his training. He was the most influential figure in the underground world, and the only person the neighborhood truly respected. "What are we doing here?" Bumpy Johnson asked. "We're going to show this pig what happens to his kind," one of the guys yelled. "He's the enemy. There are 6 of you and 1 of him," Bumpy Johnson remarked. "That isn't a fair scrap. That's an execution." "This doesn't involve you, Bumpy," the leader muttered. "Everything that happens on these blocks involves me," Bumpy Johnson replied firmly. The man with the knife glared at Mike, but then he lowered his weapon and stepped away. The rest of the group followed his lead and vanished into the night. Bumpy Johnson walked over to the trembling officer. "Are you holding up all right?" Bumpy Johnson asked. Mike nodded, still gripped by fear. "I think so." "Go get off the streets," Bumpy Johnson told him. "The air is thick tonight. It isn't safe for you." "I can't leave," Mike whispered. "I have half a night left on my clock." "Then keep your eyes open," Bumpy Johnson said before turning around. Mike watched the man disappear into the shadows. He couldn't figure out why a legendary lawbreaker had just rescued a policeman, but he knew he was lucky to be alive. At 11:52 p.m., just moments after the first encounter, Mike continued his rounds. As he ducked down a narrow alleyway, the sound of heavy boots echoed behind him. He spun around to find the same gang of 5 trailing him. "We aren't finished with you, lawman," the leader growled. "Bumpy Johnson told you to walk away," Mike reminded them, reaching for his communication device. "Bumpy isn't standing here now." They swarmed him instantly. Mike was tackled to the pavement, where a rain of boots and fists fell upon him. They snatched his service weapon and left him crumpled in the dirt. Bumpy Johnson reappeared from the darkness with 2 of his men, dispersing the group before picking Mike up. He drove the bleeding officer to a private residence owned by a local medic, Dr. Harris. The doctor looked from Mike's battered face to Bumpy Johnson with wide eyes. "You brought a member of the force to my doorstep," she whispered. "He was in trouble," Mike croaked. "He saved me." Dr. Harris sighed and ushered them inside. She cleaned the gashes on his face and checked his torso. Swollen ribs, a shredded lip, and a closed eye, she noted. But your bones are intact. You got lucky. I'm aware, Mike said. He looked at Bumpy Johnson. Why did you step in? I thought you despised the police. I despise thieves with badges, Bumpy Johnson replied coolly. There is a gap between the two. How can you be sure I'm not one of the bad ones? Because the crooked ones are too cowardly to walk these blocks solo at midnight. They move in swarms. And they pull the trigger before they open their mouths. Mike looked down. I appreciate it. Save your breath, Bumpy Johnson warned. When your commander hears that a man like me pulled you out of the fire, he's going to make you wish you'd stayed in the alley. The fallout at the station. The next morning at 8 a.m., Mike stood in front of Commander Miller's desk. He told the whole truth, the ambush, the intervention by Bumpy Johnson, and the secret doctor. The commander's skin turned a deep shade of purple. You sought medical help from a mob doctor? Miller barked. I didn't see another option, sir. There is always an option. You could have died with dignity doing your job. Instead, you let a black kingpin rescue you. He looked at Mike like he was something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. You are a stain on this department. Hand me your pride and get out. Mike walked to the locker room, feeling the weight of 100 stairs. The story had traveled fast. He was now the rookie who owed his life to the neighborhood's biggest criminal. His partner, an older detective named Sean, walked up to him. I heard the rumors, Sean said, leaning against the lockers. It's true. Bumpy Johnson saved me. Sean sneered and leaned in close. You should have just let them kill you. It's better to be a dead legend than a living coward who needed a handout from a man like that. He walked away, leaving Mike standing in total isolation. A private conversation. The following afternoon, Mike tracked Bumpy Johnson down at a jazz lounge called the Blue Note. Bumpy Johnson looked up from his drink, surprised. Officer Miller. To what do I owe the visit? I wanted to say thank you again, officially. You already did. I know. But I need to ask you something. Why? You put your name and your safety on the line for me. Why do that for a guy in blue? I didn't do it for the blue suit, Bumpy Johnson said. I did it for the man inside it. Mike took a seat across from him. Can I be real with you? I have no idea how to do this. I joined the force because I wanted to make a difference. But here, the uniform is a target. Everyone hates me before I even speak, and honestly, I can't say I blame them. The police have been monsters to this neighborhood for a long time. Bumpy Johnson gave a slow nod. So, why not just quit? Because if I walk away, nothing gets better, Mike answered. The guy they send to replace me will probably be meaner and more violent. If I stay, maybe I can show people that a badge doesn't always mean a villain. Bumpy Johnson looked at him closely. You truly think you can do that? I have to believe it, Mike said. Otherwise, why am I even wearing this suit? Bumpy Johnson leaned back in his chair. Officer Miller, I've spent 4 decades on these streets. I've watched your co-workers crush innocent people, plant evidence, and ruin families for a quick buck. To me, a blue shirt is a target. I get that, Mike said softly. But, Bumpy Johnson continued, you might be the exception. Most guys just bark orders. You're actually sitting here trying to learn something. I'll make you a deal. I'll give you a shot to prove you're the real deal. I want you to protect this neighborhood, not just police it. What's the distinction? Mike asked. Policing it means treating everyone like a suspect, Bumpy Johnson explained. Protecting it means treating them like neighbors. Figure that out, and you'll do more than just survive, you'll belong. A new way of patrolling. By mid-July, Mike changed his entire approach. He stopped marching around like he owned the place and started walking with his head up and a smile on his face. He focused on earning respect instead of demanding it. He started learning who everyone was. There was Mrs. Gable at the grocery, Mr. Thompson who kept the sidewalks clean, and young Leo who delivered the morning papers. He didn't stop them to ask for ID, he stopped them to ask how their day was going. At first, the locals stared at him with narrowed eyes. But as time passed, they began to talk. They told him about the actual issues: thieves, real neighborhood bullies, and dangerous homes. Mike didn't make a big scene. He just handled it. He found a stolen scooter for a little girl, put a stop to a local brawler, and cleared out a small-time pusher without a fuss. The word on the street started to shift. That Mike guy? He's actually okay. He helps. The incident on 132nd Street. On July 15th, a call for help came over the radio. Gunshots had broken out on 132nd Street. Mike was the first to arrive and found a young man on the ground, bleeding from a bullet hole in his thigh. Mike didn't pull his handcuffs. He called for a medic and knelt in the dirt, pressing his hands against the wound to stop the bleeding. "Hang in there, kid. You're going to be fine," Mike promised. The young man looked up, terrified. "Are you taking me to jail? I was running illegal bets." Mike didn't look away from the wound. "Right now, you're a guy who's bleeding out. That matters a lot more to me than some betting slips." When the paramedics took the boy away, the crowd that had gathered just stood there, stunned. They had watched a white officer save a local boy without judging him or throwing him in chains. He just did his job as a human being. By that night, everyone in the area knew Mike Miller was a different kind of cop. The secret meeting. In August, Bumpy Johnson organized a quiet gathering with the neighborhood's most important figures: ministers, shopkeepers, and even the local gamblers. "There's a new officer at the precinct named Mike Miller," Bumpy Johnson told the group. "He's not like the rest." "How so?" someone asked. "He won't take a bribe, he doesn't push people around, and he actually cares about what happens to us," Bumpy Johnson said. The local preacher, Reverend Evans, stood up to speak his mind. "Bumpy, are you saying you actually trust this guy?" the Reverend asked. "I don't give my full trust to anyone," Bumpy Johnson answered. "But I can see he's making an effort. That's a hell of a lot more than I can say for the rest of the precinct." By September, Mike's partner, Sean, finally got his transfer. He refused to ride in a car with the guy who owed his life to Bumpy Johnson. Mike was paired with a new officer, Rico Rodriguez. Rico was Puerto Rican and understood what it felt like to be an outsider. The two of them bonded quickly, two men from minority backgrounds navigating a white-dominated department in a black neighborhood. It was an unlikely team, but it worked because both of them actually had a heart. In October, Mike was called to a home where a man was violently attacking his spouse. Mike put the husband in cuffs, but the woman was shaking with terror. "He's going to murder me the second he's out on bail," she sobbed. Mike knew the legal system wouldn't move fast enough. He made a quiet phone call to Bumpy Johnson. "I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" "There's a woman here whose husband is a monster. I've got him in a cell, but she's terrified of his return. She needs a way out. And you want me to be her security detail?" Bumpy Johnson asked. "You told me my job was to protect the community," Mike replied. "This is me doing exactly that." Bumpy Johnson let out a soft chuckle. "You're a quick study, officer." 2 days later, the woman was safely moved to her sister's house in another state. When the husband was eventually released, he was met at the gate by one of Bumpy's enforcers, a man named Slim. Slim made it very clear that if the husband even thought about finding his wife, he'd vanish from the face of the earth. The man was never heard from again. Mike realized then that Bumpy Johnson's brand of justice was often much more effective than the law. The captain's warning. In November, Commander Miller summoned Mike to his office again. "Miller, I'm hearing some unsettling rumors." "Like what, sir?" "Word is you're in bed with Bumpy Johnson." "I'm not working with him," Mike stated firmly. "I'm working for the people who live here." "In this neighborhood, that's the same thing," the commander barked. "Bumpy Johnson is a kingpin. He's a thug. He's also more respected on these streets than anyone wearing this uniform," Mike countered. Is that because he's a criminal, or because he actually looks out for them while we just knock heads? The commander stood up, his face darkening. You're playing a very dangerous game, Miller. You're on thin ice. I know I am, sir. But I can't stop. Someone has to start building a bridge. If it's not me, then who's going to do it? A Harlem Christmas. By December, 6 months had passed since the night Mike's life was saved. On Christmas Eve, Mike was walking his route when he saw several families living in cold apartments with no food and no presents for their children. He reached out to Bumpy Johnson again. You're starting to make a habit of this, Bumpy Johnson said over the phone. It's Christmas, Mike said. There are kids out here with nothing. I want to give them a real holiday. And why should I foot the bill? Because it's the right thing to do. Plain and simple. On Christmas morning, 50 families woke up to find bags of groceries, warm winter coats, and piles of toys. The donations were anonymous, but the neighborhood knew the truth. They knew Mike Miller and Bumpy Johnson had teamed up. For the first time, people started to think that maybe, just maybe, the law and the streets could work together if they both wanted to protect the people. The ultimate protection. In January 1957, Mike's wife, Sarah, was 8 months pregnant. Mike was constantly on edge. Harlem was a violent place, and he worried his work would make his family a target. Bumpy Johnson caught wind of Mike's stress and sent a messenger with a simple note, "Your wife is under my protection. No one touches her." Mike went to see him to express his gratitude. "You didn't have to go that far." "Yes, I did," Bumpy Johnson replied. "Why?" "Because you've earned it," Bumpy Johnson said. "You've proven that not every man in a uniform is a predator. That's a rare thing in this world, and rare things are worth keeping safe." On February 14, 1957, Sarah's labor started suddenly. Mike scrambled to get her to the clinic, but the afternoon traffic was a nightmare. They were completely gridlocked, and Sarah was terrified. "The baby is coming now, Mike. We aren't going to make it." Mike grabbed his radio, but instead of calling the station, he reached out to his contacts on the street. "This is Mike Miller. I'm stuck at the corner of 125th and Lenox with my wife in labor. I need a path opened up." Less than 5 minutes later, 3 black sedans appeared. Bumpy Johnson's associates jumped out, blocked the cross-traffic, and created a high-speed escort all the way to the emergency room. Sarah gave birth to a healthy boy, Mike Jr. That evening, a massive bouquet of roses arrived at the recovery room with a short card. "Welcome to the neighborhood, little man. You'll never have to worry about your safety here." Mike's eyes welled up as he read it. The ultimatum. By March 1957, 9 months had passed since the night in the alley. Mike was summoned to Commander Miller's office. The commander didn't say a word, he just pushed a manila envelope across the mahogany desk. "What is this?" Mike asked. "Your relocation papers. You're going to a quiet precinct out in the suburbs. You start Monday." Mike felt a pit in his stomach. "Why now?" "Because you've blurred the lines, Miller. You're too cozy with the local talent." "I'm cozy with the residents," Mike corrected. "Bumpy Johnson is a part of this city whether you like it or not." "He's a felon, and that's the issue," the commander barked. "You've lost your perspective. Sir, the crime rate in my zone has dropped by 30%. Mike argued. "That's only because you're letting the mob handle the dirty work. You aren't a cop anymore. You're an ambassador." The commander stood up. "You have 2 choices, take the move or turn in your shield. I want an answer in 24 hours. Seeking advice. Mike went straight to the jazz lounge to find Bumpy Johnson. He explained the situation, the forced transfer and the threat to his career. "They're trying to push me out," Mike said. Bumpy Johnson nodded, looking unsurprised. "What should my move be? What does your gut tell you?" "I want to stay and finish what I started. But if I say no, I'm unemployed." Bumpy Johnson leaned back, exhaling a cloud of cigar smoke. "Officer Miller, a decade ago, I would have cheered to see you go. One less uniform to worry about. But I've watched you. I've seen the way people look at you now. You've changed the energy on these streets. My advice? Don't go quietly. Fight them. How? Force them to go on the record. Make them explain why they want to remove a man who actually lowered the crime rate. Make them justify why they are getting rid of the only officer the people actually respect. The appeal. On March 15, 1957, Mike bypassed his commander and requested an audience with the chief of police, Chief Henderson. To Mike's surprise, the chief agreed to see him. In the high-ceilinged office downtown, Mike laid out his statistics. Chief, in the less than a year I've been on this beat, violent crime in my sector has plummeted by 30%. We have more successful arrests, fewer complaints of brutality, and for the first time in a generation, people are actually calling us for help. Henderson looked over the charts. These figures are remarkable. Thank you, sir. But Commander Miller is trying to transfer me because I've opened lines of communication with community figures, including Bumpy Johnson. The chief's expression hardened. The racketeer? Yes, sir. But here is the reality. Bumpy Johnson has more power in that neighborhood than the entire police department. We can keep fighting a war we're losing, or we can find a way to exist in the same space where we both want the streets to be safe. If the goal is peace, does it matter who helps us keep it? Chief Henderson stared at Mike for a long time. You honestly believe that? I've lived it for 9 months, sir. The results are right there on your desk. Isn't safety what we're all after? Chief Henderson sat in silence for a while before finally speaking. You can keep your post in the neighborhood. Thank you, sir, Mike breathed. But, the chief added, I'll have eyes on you. If I find even a shred of evidence that you are shielding Bumpy Johnson's criminal business, you're finished. Do you understand? Understood, sir. I'm not here to protect his business. I'm here to protect the people. Sometimes those paths run side by side. The chief gave a sharp nod. Just make sure you don't step over the line. The return. In April 1957, Mike returned to his beat. The neighborhood celebrated in its own quiet way. People whispered the news, Mike Miller is staying. The cop who actually listens is still on our side. Bumpy Johnson sent a message, nice work. You stood your ground and you won. Mike went to see him in person. I appreciate the advice. For what? For teaching me how to do this the right way. I didn't teach you a thing, Bumpy Johnson replied. You found your own way. I just gave you the opportunity. Most people just need a chance. The War on Poison. By May 1958, 2 years after their first meeting, a new nightmare arrived. Heroin began flooding the streets, tearing families apart. Bumpy Johnson had his hand in many things, gambling, spirits, and protection, but he drew the line at narcotics. He saw drugs as a plague on his people. He declared a private war, using his men to violently run dealers out of the area. Mike watched the chaos with a heavy heart. He knew Bumpy Johnson was doing the right thing, but the methods were bloody. He tracked Bumpy Johnson down. We have to discuss the situation. The dealers? I'm cleaning house, Bumpy Johnson said. You're hurting people and some are ending up dead. That's against the law. So is selling death to teenagers, Bumpy Johnson snapped. I agree. But let's try a different tactic, Mike suggested. Let me be the one to cuff them. You can't catch them all. Maybe not, but I can make it so expensive and risky for them to operate here that they'll pack up and leave. Let me build real cases. Bumpy Johnson thought it over. And if your way doesn't work, then I won't stand in your way, Mike promised. For the next half year, the two men worked in a strange, unofficial partnership. Bumpy's scouts would point out the dealers, and Mike would sweep in to make the arrests and ensure the charges stuck. By December, the presence of heroin in the area had dropped by over half. The neighborhood saw the results. Mike Miller and Bumpy Johnson were cleaning up the streets together. The promotion. In January 1960, 4 years after that life-changing night, Mike was promoted to detective. He was the first officer from that precinct to move up the ranks in a decade. Commander Miller was livid, but the numbers were undeniable. Mike's area had the lowest crime stats in the city and the highest level of trust from the residents. Detective Miller became a case study. Other departments started looking at his style, what they called neighborhood-first policing. He showed that building a bridge with local leaders, even the ones the police usually fought, was the key to real peace. The rising tide. By March 1963, 7 years since he'd been rescued in the alley, the fight for civil rights was reaching a boiling point. Across the country, there was massive friction between the police and black communities. But the vibe in this neighborhood was different. When protests broke out, Detective Miller was there to keep the peace. He shielded the marchers from aggressive officers from other precincts and ensured no one was harassed for exercising their rights. He became known as the officer who stood with the people, not against them. During a large rally, Reverend Evans took the stage. "We've all seen the news. There are officers who use their clubs to keep us down. But then there's Detective Mike Miller. He's the one who looks out for us. He understands that real law and order means everyone is treated fairly. He is the proof that a badge doesn't have to mean an enemy." As the crowd cheered, Mike stood at the back of the park, his eyes misty. This was the reason he had put on the uniform in the first place. In July 1964, the atmosphere was electric as the famous activist Malcolm X prepared to address a massive gathering. The police brass wanted to shut the event down immediately, but Mike stepped in. "Sir, this man has every right to speak," Mike told his superiors. "He's causing a riot," the commander shouted. "He's using his right to free speech," Mike countered. "We have no legal reason to stop this." Commander Miller arrived on the scene and pushed Mike aside, ordering the officers to charge the crowd. Mike didn't move. He stood directly in the gap between the police line and the protesters. "If you want to get to them, you'll have to move me first," Mike said firmly. "Are you serious? You're defying a direct command." Miller screamed. "I am," Mike replied. "Because this command is an injustice." Mike was handed a 2-week suspension without a cent of pay, but he didn't mind. The crowd remained safe. Malcolm X later approached him to offer his personal thanks. "Detective Miller, you put your livelihood on the line for us." "Why?" "Because it was the right thing to do," Mike said. Malcolm X looked at him with respect. "You're the one Bumpy Johnson rescued all those years ago, aren't you? He was right about you. You aren't like the others." The celebration. In August 1964, after his suspension ended, Mike returned to the neighborhood. To his shock, the community threw him a massive party at a local ballroom. Bumpy Johnson hosted the event, which was packed with hundreds of people, families of all backgrounds coming together to honor a policeman. Bumpy Johnson raised a glass to the room. "Detective Miller," he announced. "Saving your life 8 years ago was the best move I ever made." The room erupted in cheers. Mike raised his own glass in return. "Mr. Johnson, you didn't just save my life that night. You taught me how to live it. You showed me that doing what is right is more important than just following the rules. Thank you." The two men shook hands as the crowd went wild. It was a sight no one thought they'd see, a legendary lawbreaker and a decorated detective standing as allies. Standing against the shadows. By November 1965, a new, well-funded group of traffickers tried to force their way back into the neighborhood. They were dangerous and organized. When Mike stood in their way, they sent a message to his home: "Back off, or your wife and son will pay the price." Mike went straight to Bumpy Johnson. "They've threatened Sarah and little Mike." Bumpy Johnson's expression turned to stone. "Where is your family right now?" "They're at a safe house I set up." "Good. Keep them there," Bumpy Johnson said. "Bumpy, I can't ask you to get your hands dirty for me," Mike started. "You aren't asking. I'm telling you," Bumpy Johnson interrupted. "Those people threatened your family. In this neighborhood, That means they threatened mine. Within a single day, the threat vanished. Some of the traffickers were hauled off to jail by Mike's unit, while others were convinced to leave town by Bumpy's associates. A few simply disappeared. Mike didn't ask for the details. He just knew that Sarah and his son were safe and under the neighborhood's protection. The final days. In January 1968, 12 years after the night in the alley, Bumpy Johnson's health began to fail. At 63, his heart was giving out. Mike visited him almost every day, bringing him meals and sharing stories of the old days. "You saved my life," Mike whispered during one visit. "And you made that life worth saving," Bumpy Johnson replied weakly. "By looking out for these streets and proving that a man with a badge can be trusted, you transformed this place." "No," Mike said, squeezing his friend's hand. "We transformed it together." On July 7, 1968, the heart of the neighborhood stopped. Bumpy Johnson passed away from a heart attack at the age of 63. Mike stood at the funeral in his crispest dress uniform, standing shoulder to shoulder with Bumpy's widow, Sarah, and his closest associates. Thousands of locals lined the streets. Reverend Evans stood before the crowd and spoke with a booming voice. Bumpy Johnson was a complex man. He was a rule-breaker, a guardian, a leader, and a confidant. But his most powerful act was proving that we can transform one another. He showed us that rivals can become partners, that a kingpin and a detective can share the same dream of a safe home. Detective Mike Miller, standing here in his blues, is the living evidence of that truth. Mike didn't hide his tears. He had lost his greatest teacher, the man who had shown him the true meaning of service. Holding the line. By August 1968, only a month after the funeral, the shadows tried to return. Without Bumpy Johnson's heavy hand to keep them out, pushers and outside gangs tried to reclaim the corners. Violence began to spike. Mike fought back with a new fire. He felt Bumpy's ghost on every block, trusting him to keep the peace. He started a training program for the younger officers, passing down the lessons he'd learned, earn their trust. Respect the residents. Be a shield, not a hammer. Slowly, a new breed of police officers emerged. They followed Mike's lead, and by 1970, the streets were calm again. Mike hadn't just relied on a friendship, he had built a new system of justice that could survive even after the giants were gone. The final salute. In December 1976, exactly 20 years after Bumpy Johnson had pulled him from that alley, Detective Mike Miller decided to hang up his badge. He was 48 years old, with over 2 decades of service under his belt. His farewell party was held at the same lounge where it all began. Bumpy's widow, Sarah, now 68, hosted the event to keep her husband's memory burning bright. Mike stood before the packed room to give his final address. 20 years ago, I was a green rookie who didn't know a thing, Mike told the silent room. I was cornered by 5 men, and I was seconds away from death. Bumpy Johnson stepped out of the dark and saved me. He had no reason to help a white cop, and I had no reason to trust him. We were born to be rivals. He took a deep breath. But he saved me anyway. And then he did something even bigger. He showed me how to do this job with honor. He taught me to serve people instead of trying to rule them. He showed me that trust is something you build, not something you demand. Because of him, this neighborhood changed. Not because we cracked heads, but because we became partners. Mike looked at the empty chair where his friend used to sit. I want to thank Bumpy Johnson for saving my life, and more importantly, for showing me what to do with it. Sarah Johnson walked up to the podium and handed Mike a yellowed, sealed envelope. "What is this?" Mike asked. "Something Bumpy wrote years ago," she whispered. "He told me to give it to you only on the day you walked away from the force." Mike tore it open. The note was brief, written in Bumpy's bold, elegant handwriting. Detective Miller. If you're reading this, I'm long gone and you've made it to the finish line. Good. That means I was right about you from the start. 20 years ago, I pulled you out of that alley, but in a way, you rescued me too. You proved that real change isn't just a dream. You showed me that a badge could actually stand for something good. Thank you for being the exception, for being a man of your word, and for looking after this neighborhood when my own strength failed. You aren't just a fine detective, you're a remarkable human being. This city was lucky to have you. Bumpy Johnson. Mike folded the paper carefully and tucked it into his breast pocket. He looked out at the faces of the people he had served for over 2 decades. I'm not going anywhere, he promised. Even without the badge, I'll keep looking out for these streets. That's the lesson Bumpy left behind, and it's the only way to live. A living legacy. From 1976 until 1996, Mike stayed true to his word. Though retired, he remained a fixture in the community. He mentored the neighborhood's youth, helped build new parks, and advised young officers on how to keep the peace without using a club. He made sure the bridge Bumpy Johnson helped him build never crumbled. In 1996, the city officially renamed a prominent boulevard Mike Miller Way. At the ceremony, a 68-year-old Mike stood at the podium. "This sign shouldn't have my name on it," he told the crowd. "It should have Bumpy Johnson's. He's the one who saw potential in a scared rookie. I just spent my life trying to prove him right." Sarah Johnson, now 88 years old, stood by his side and gripped his arm. "Bumpy would be beaming today," she whispered. "I truly hope so," Mike replied. "I know so," she said. "You stood guard over this neighborhood for 40 years. That is a legacy that will never fade." In May 2003, Mike Miller passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 75. His funeral was held at the same historic cathedral where Bumpy Johnson had been laid to rest decades earlier. The service was attended by over 3,000 people from every walk of life: local shopkeepers, high-ranking officials, and the families Mike had protected over the years. The successor to Reverend Evans stood before the diverse crowd to deliver the final words. "We are here to honor a man who refused to see the world in black and white, or as cops and criminals," the Reverend said. "He saw only neighbors. He was a man who was saved by a legend, and in return, he spent every day of his life saving the soul of this community." The Reverend continued his tribute, speaking to a room filled with people who were alive because of Mike Miller's bravery. "Detective Miller showed us something vital. One person has the power to shift the world. He proved that rivals can become brothers and that your conscience should always be your highest commander. He was rescued by a man the law called a villain, and he spent every waking hour honoring that act of mercy by guarding the neighborhood that man loved. That isn't just a career, that is a sacred calling." Mike Miller Jr., now a man of 46, took the podium with a steady voice. "My father raised me to know that heroes aren't defined by their skin or their titles. He taught me that a person on the street can hold more honor than a person in a palace, and that a badge is only as good as the heart behind it. Bumpy Johnson gave my father a second chance at life, and my father spent 50 years making sure that gift wasn't squandered. Thank you, Dad. And thank you, Bumpy, for saving him so he could spend his life saving us." This story of an impossible friendship, deep-seated respect, and 4 decades of protection shows us that even the bitterest enemies can find common ground when they care about the people around them. If this account of courage moved you, consider the power of looking past labels. Mike Miller and Bumpy Johnson were supposed to be on opposite sides of a war, but they chose to be on the same side of humanity. They didn't just survive in Harlem, they changed its DNA forever. What would you have done if you were in Mike's shoes that night in the alley? Would you have taken the help of a stranger, or let pride get in the way? Drop your thoughts in the comment and don't forget to subscribe.